Okay, here's what I know about my grandpa. His name was D.C. Richards, but everyone called him D. He married my grandmother Martha and had 2 daughters, my mom Dee Dee and her younger sister Amy. But probably the biggest thing that I know about my grandpa is that he died when my mom was in dental school, so I never got the chance to meet him. But this story isn't about his death, it's about his life, or specifically a section of his life that we didn't know too much about. Before I get into all that, let me introduce you to my mom. Say hi, Mom.
Hi, Sam.
And to my grandma, who I've always called Nan.
Hi.
They're both a big part of this story, which all began when Nan decided to clean out her basement.
So my mom called me the other day and said, I've decided to go downstairs to the awful basement 5 times every day and carry up a load of things. And she said, you won't believe what I've found on one of my trips. I found love letters from your dad.
The first letter that I read was to a sweetheart, and I thought, that's interesting. That should be to me.
But they weren't to her. She had found an envelope full of love letters from her husband to another woman. Probably not very high up on the list of things you're hoping to find in your basement. But the letters are all dated 1944. He didn't meet my grandma until 1954, a full decade later. So everybody calm down. We're not dealing with a mistress situation here, just an early love. These letters were written during the time that my grandpa was a Morse code operator for the Army. He was stationed in the Aleutian Islands.
It says that he got to his station in the Aleutian sector by way of the North Pole. That's cool. That's cool. He and Santa. Yep.
And he always told us of this beautiful, barren, isolated place and what he had found to make life worth living while he was there. But he never told me about all the girls that he wrote to.
We've only got the letters that he wrote, no responses. So the story is kind of hard to piece together at times. But here's what we know.
The short synopsis is he met a woman.
And her name was Terry.
Apparently he really liked her.
I can just picture him sitting in like a little hut on a barren, isolated island off the coast of Alaska. Maybe he's hunched over a typewriter, punching away at the keys as he's listening to chatter from across the Pacific. The wind whipping around the little hut. It was probably very beautiful, and probably very cold, and definitely very lonely. It was 1944, right at the tail end of World War II. Maybe there wasn't that much coming through the wires. So, he started writing letters to a girl who he met on a fast train out of Denver, and he decides the best plan of action is to just tell her about himself. Here's how he lays it out in the first letter, dated 24th of November, 1944. I am going to write you a letter every day for the next 14 sundowns. This being the first, it will consist of an introduction. The following 12 will be in chapter form, each dealing with a corollary part of my life. In these permanent tabloids, I shall answer your many questions, as well as give data which should help you better understand the guy called D. For my mom and grandma, it was like hearing his voice again after 30 years. For me, I was hearing it for the first time. And what a voice it was.
He was a captivating storyteller.
There's also your typical love letter stuff in there. You know, how when he looks at the moon, he knows they're both looking at the same moon.
I'll be looking at the moon.
It's almost every letter, isn't it, that he refers to the stars, and that he knows that when he looks up, that she's looking up at the same stars. I've never been in the Alaska area, but I seem to have an image in my mind that maybe the stars are a little brighter up there.
There's this fake diary entry.
A hilarious fake diary entry. Dear Diary, the movements of the day have been set to rhythm by the distal pounding of my happy heart. Diary, your pages of the past 4 months have been splashed frequently with my sweet thoughts of her, so today is no exception. Only that she has been even more close to me, if that is possible. The evening has been like a fairy tale.
I just kept thinking, regardless of when these were written, this has got to be some tough stuff for my grandmother to read, right?
He graduated from high school in 1933 at the depth of the Deep Depression. And I was born in 1933. But he was a great guy. And we fell in love, and then we had to take care of everybody's opinion about our age difference, and we decided that we just didn't have to discuss what had happened before we met, because when we met was when life really got started. So I didn't know anything about any of his previous girlfriends, and he didn't know anything about any of the gooky guys that I had dated when I was in college.
We were learning a lot, but after reading one of the letters, we were worried that we had maybe learned too much.
I'm reading along about the second or third letter that I had read, and he said, and sweetheart, I haven't told you, but I had a son. And I thought, what?
My grandma dropped the letters, and she didn't come back to them for a few days, understandably. But when she did come back, she picked up right where she left off.
And then he told about his son, the fox, that he called Sammy.
Okay, so he didn't actually have a son? He just had a very special relationship with a blue fox, I guess?
And he had fed it, took it in basically as a pet, and kept it around as long as he could. And then as it grew into maturity, it went away one night, and he said found its mate and never came back.
And my favorite part of the letters is when he says he named the fox Sammy. I don't know why. And he just kind of leaves that. Well, I named my firstborn son Sammy. It is just amazing to me. We both chose the same name. That, I had put the letters down, have myself a nice little cry fest, and then dry my tears and pick them up and read them to the end.
So the letters tell us all these things about him.
There's several letters several days in a row. Then there's a gap of 4 days. And then the sad letter. It seems cold, and it begins, Dear Terry, I am now in receipt of your letter under the date of 6 December this year, announcing your engagement and forthcoming marriage to a sweetheart of childhood days. How sad. As you read his words, you can just feel his heart breaking. It's obviously over.
Although they didn't work on Terry, the letters definitely worked on us.
We like them because it's a personality that you hadn't experienced. And there's not many ways left to experience other than stories from me, stories from Amy, stories from Nan. But this is stories from him. And that's different. That's way different.
It was quite an emotional moment to find this voice in a musty old basement.
For NYU Radio Reporting, I'm Sammy the Fox, and that's how I met my Grandpa D.